What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast. This is Faraz Siddiqui. I'm here with Zach Rizzuto. We're going to go over Week 10 must-add players on the waiver wire. Listen, we're here. This is like the home stretch almost. We're almost at the home. We're in the second half of the season. We only got a few weeks before fantasy playoffs start. So now this is when you're kind of making that playoff push. Okay, there's a couple sneaky ads on the waiver wire this week that you want to, pay attention to, right? Like just because it seems on surface level that it might be a weaker waiver wire than normal in terms of being able to pick guys up. You never know, right? Like you want to pick up guys that could strategically actually bring you some value, over the next couple of weeks, potentially guys who can help you win a championship. So make sure you listen to this episode, and we're going to go over the top 20 waiver wire pickup. So even if these top guys aren't available, there should be a few of these guys who are available on your waiver wire, even if you're in like a 14-team league. Okay. Yeah. Zach, how's it going, man? Interesting game last night. Lamar didn't have a whole lot of help, but he made it happen. And the Ravens ended up winning.
Yeah. It was all right. We just talked about, Lamar Jackson yesterday. Is he, are we lumping him in with those guys? We talked about Justin Fields, are we lumping him in with the guys that maybe we trade Justin Fields for? Last night, it wasn't really encouraging, but I wasn't too upset either because, he didn't have many weapons, like we said. How many catches did receivers have in this game? Was it like 5?
Yeah, is that what it was? I mean, it was very spread out. Isaiah Likely ended up with the one catch for a touchdown. That's all he had.
Yeah.
In that was
game. Disappointing. It looks so good.
Super disappointing, and if you played DFS and you faded Likely and you had Kenyon Drake in your lineup, that's probably what got done for you. But everyone was on him. He had that one catch for a touchdown. He did lead them with 5 targets. And Lamar Jackson, which is kind of crazy, like 5 targets leads your team. But Lamar Jackson did end up spreading it around like crazy. Completed only 12 balls in this game. Didn't have to throw a ton. It was just him and Kenyon Drake running the ball the entire time. And Kenyon Drake ended up with those 2 touchdowns. But those 5 targets to Isaiah Likely, ended up being a 23% target share. So the process was okay, but the end result wasn't ideal.
Yeah, I mean, if you had Lamar, you're not upset. Like he still had, 16 fantasy points at the end of the day because of that rushing upside. He did, he dropped the ball once. I don't know if you lose points in your league for that, but his upside's a little bit capped because he doesn't have any playmakers really. He has his rushing ability. That's about all that kept him relevant last night. Those 82 yards on the ground, and you can expect that to continue. It looked a lot like those past few weeks that we had, where he just hasn't been as explosive as he was the first. Was it 2 weeks, 3 weeks? So you can always lean on that, but he's kind of lacking luster right now for me. I think he looked good enough, given the situation with the weapons, but he's going to need some more weapons if he's going to be a bigger fantasy contributor down the stretch. So right now, I'm not sure. He's I don't want to call him, obviously his upside is ridiculous, but I don't want to call him a mid to low QB1 right now, but the numbers that he's been putting up recently, that's kind of where I'm going to have to lump him in.
Yeah, he's a solid QB1 right now. He's not a high-end QB1, unfortunately. I mean, obviously he can have a monster game at any point. He always has that ceiling, but he hasn't hit that ceiling in a little bit. Maybe OBJ, going to Baltimore, it's possible. OBJ apparently is going to be healthy. He's going to be medically cleared at the end of this week, and it is Jake Glazer reported that teams might end up being in a little bit of a bidding war for his services. So, we'll see where he ends up landing. He is on this waiver wire list, and we'll get there. But, it's interesting. Alvin Kamara, bad day at the office for him, too. Only 9 touches in this game.
Yeah.
Only 3 catches. That's super disappointing, considering the Ravens have been giving up a ton of receptions to running backs coming into this game. But I'll say this, like the Ravens defense, over the last several weeks, they have been pretty damn good lately. And, this has turned into a pretty tough matchup for both running backs and wide receivers, going forward. Early on in the season, they were extremely vulnerable, to running backs and wide receivers. But now they really turned things around. And this is what they need, from an NFL standpoint. The fact that Lamar doesn't have the weapons that, he had, to start the year. This is what the Ravens need right now. So, if you're going up against the Ravens, this isn't a cakewalk, and still, like if you look at the fantasy matchups, it'll still show green when you're going up against the Ravens, with these wide receivers. But that's not necessarily the case, just because they had a They were giving up a ton of fantasy points early on in the year.
And you don't want to, you can't ever trust completely. You talk about that green matchup indicator on the schedule, on the game log. You can't really do that. Even if it's a good matchup, you have to consider that the way the team's playing when your player is playing them, if that makes sense. So for instance, just last night we saw Chris Olave. It looked like a good matchup on paper because those first few weeks, Baltimore, their defense let up all those yards and gave up all those points. Their actual performance is being a bit inflated. It looks a lot worse than it is, especially with the streak that they're on right now. I thought this was going to be, a much higher scoring game. I mean, 27 points for the Ravens was, plenty, but I thought that the Saints would have an easier time moving the ball. When I was watching, the Saints couldn't do anything outside of that last drive at the end. Obviously, they put up some more points after the fact, in the second half. But that whole first half, the Saints did nothing. I was like, this was supposed to be a bad Baltimore defense. And Roquan Smith, I don't know if that was the change they made, but he was in on a couple stops. Alvin Kamara couldn't get anything going on the ground and obviously through the air. It looked like a changed defense, and we'll see if that continues. But if it does, it might be more tough sledding for guys playing against this defense moving forward.
Definitely. Yeah. And Chris Olave, I was down on him a little bit. He actually surpassed my expectations a little bit. I had him going under on a lot of the props that I've seen, because it was a tough matchup, I think, especially given how well the corners have been playing on the outside lately. But yeah, that's about it. That's really all I have to say about that. Did we already talk about, we talked about Jeff Saturday becoming the head coach. I think that broke live on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yesterday. We talked about it yesterday. But let's get into the waiver wire pickups now. At number 1, I have Jeff Wilson here. He ended up leading the Dolphins backfield in snaps and opportunities on Sunday, just a few days after being traded to them. He ran one more route than Raheem Mostert as well. He knows the system, right? He came in and this turned into a 50-50 split in his first game there. And he ended up outplaying Mostert. So I see this to be at least a 50-50 split moving forward, with a chance of Jeff Wilson edging Raheem Mostert out even more as we go forward, right? He was playing very well, in San Francisco. He comes over here to the guy who was running their run game over the past several years in San Francisco. He knows the system, and he got the snaps, he got the touches, and he ended up performing.
Yeah. I think if, in Miami, if this was any other running back, besides Jeff Wilson, we wouldn't see this type of usage and production. But because it's Jeff Wilson, like you said, with Mike McDaniel there, the familiarity is there. That's why we're seeing this happen. And of course, Mike McDaniel, in those years that he was in San Francisco, he must have gotten close, with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. There's no way he's going to, fade one of them in this backfield. It's going to be a split. And I kind of talked a little bit about that last week before the game this weekend even happened. And it looks like that's the way it's going to be. I think Jeff Wilson, like I said, he's younger. I think he's more dynamic. He has more of an all-around skill set. It looks like they can use him in more ways, maybe Raheem Mostert. And that's not shade at Raheem Mostert. It's just the way that he was played looked a lot better than Raheem Mostert. So I think Jeff Wilson is pretty much a clear add this week on the waiver wire. I'd be surprised a little bit. I'm not sure if anybody dropped him when he got traded to Miami. It says his roster percent is up to 50 right now in Sleeper. It moved up 14%. People might be buying into him a little bit more, but we should get that to 60 at least, because it looks like he's going to have a role moving forward in this offense and down the stretch.
Yeah, it was really what did it was Christian McCaffrey being traded to the 49ers. And once he was being traded to the 49ers, you figure that he's going to get all the snaps. Jeff Wilson's just a handcuff at this point. I'm going to drop him. Elijah Mitchell's going to be back soon. And Jeff Wilson, his name wasn't really floating around, with those trade talks that much. So now, and then he gets traded to Miami. You're like, all right, well, he'll probably back up Raheem Mostert. So people didn't really rush to the waiver wire, the free agent pool to grab him, right? So at this point, people are like, oh, wait. Jeff Wilson's the guy to have in that backfield at this point. So, yeah, I can see Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert still has that big playability. I would see, he could be kind of like the lightning to Jeff Wilson's thunder. That's kind of how I look at it. And I see that that's how it's going to play out. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Greg Dulcich, I have him at number 2. In his first 3 games in the NFL, Dulcich has had double-digit PPR fantasy points. His last game, he went 4 for 87 on a bad offense, right? And he has a solid matchup against Tennessee this week. Here's what I had on him in my rookie draft kit this offseason. This is what I had.
The receipts are coming out.
I said No, this is just
Yeah, no,
this is
no,
not
no. I'm
receipts.
not making fun of you. I'm just saying. I think
No,
it's
no,
interesting.
I know. I just want to state
Yeah.
that I'm not trying to receipt myself. This is more like why I think he's a good pickup. That's
Mhm.
kind of what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say that he looked the best to film on film to me. He had 2.17 yards per team pass attempt. That was third best in this class behind Trey McBride and Isaiah Likely. And then his 1.93 yards per route run last year was fourth best among tight ends. And then on top of that, he's one of the most athletic tight ends coming into this class or coming into the league this year in this class. And then his level of competition was also a step above both Trey McBride and Isaiah Likely, right? And those were the other
Right.
two guys that coming into in this rookie draft class among tight ends. Those are the guys that you really paid attention to. But he was able to get it done, with better competition. So something to kind of note, in terms of like what his as him as a prospect, what he looked like. So pick him up.
Yeah.
That's basically what it comes down to.
Absolutely. And he has he's finished as a tight end 1 every week, right? In
Yeah.
terms of points scored. So how could you not pick that up? The way the tight end landscape is, nobody's going to be doing better than you at that point unless they have Kelsey or Andrews. And Andrews was hurt. And just talking about tight ends, even Greg Dulcich, he looks like he could be a good tight end, especially if he continues to build rapport with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is supposed to be in Denver for a while now, so that could end up being a nice two-headed monster there between Russell Wilson and Greg Dulcich. That could be a good connection. I just wonder, once Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, aren't in the league, do you see any guys coming up that are going to be like, the bona fide tight end ones moving forward? Or do you think that, like, is there going to be any standout, or is it just going to be a bunch of these guys like these? Is it going to be streaming tight ends every week? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
Like,
it's. I mean,
who's
wait,
it
listen.
going to be?
Mark Andrews is young, relatively
Yeah.
young. He's going to be there for a while. Travis Kelce, he's probably gonna. He probably has a couple years, maybe a couple years left in him. There's going to be these guys who are going to pop off. I
Mhm.
think there's always going to be those elite tight ends. And now the way that the league is using tight ends, more and more, they like these tweener guys, who are like the Isaiah Likely's and those guys who don't have the build like a Travis Kelce, the guys who are the all around tight ends.
Yeah.
But you never know. It really comes down to, usage and ability, right? Travis Kelce has been lucky enough, to be with. Honestly, I would say that it's not even an Andy Reid thing. Travis
Mhm.
Kelce would have been is a boss regardless. Like whoever he would have been with, he probably would have been performing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, there's going to be those guys I think that are going to be in that elite category. But at the end of the day, it's like there's only a few Tony Gonzalez's we're going to see. There's only a few Travis Kelce's we're going to see. You know what I mean? These are like the a few Gronks,
Mhm.
right? These are the guys that are the elite of the elite, and those don't grow on trees.
Right. No, they don't.
Mark Andrews has a chance to do it. It's just he doesn't have as big of a sample size as a guy like Travis Kelce, but
Yeah.
he has a chance. He definitely
Travis
has a chance.
Kelce's just owned the position for the
Yeah,
past, I don't even know how long. Like,
exactly.
since he came in the league, he just looks ridiculous. But
Oh yeah. Moving to number 3 here, we got Terrace Marshall. I had a feeling Terrace Marshall would be high on this list last week.
yeah,
The QB situation is in flux in Carolina, but PJ Walker will be back under center for this Thursday night's matchup against Atlanta. Great matchup, right? I'd plug Marshall in this week as a borderline wide receiver 3, right? Like something like that.
Mhm.
He was a second round pick last year, right? He's a big wide receiver, runs a 4.4 40. His athletic measurables are through the roof. He broke out at 19 years old. He was an early declare. These are all signs, second round pick. Like these are all signs of like, a guy who usually succeeds in the NFL,
Right.
So the coaching staff is gone. This is somebody that you want to pick up as a potential breakout player. All right.
Mhm.
Him having a rookie year to forget, like it doesn't work in his favor at all. Because usually players who come into the league, if the rookie year, they had a rookie year like that, usually they don't succeed. But this could be an exception just because of how, you could say that this coaching staff before them, they had their issues,
Had
right?
their issues. Yeah, I'd say
They
so.
had their issues. That's a nice way of saying it.
I think Terrace Marshall deserves a mulligan because of the coaching and because, you look at the Panthers offense last year in 2021. I mean, Sam Darnold was running it. It's like, has he had any chance to actually show what he could do in a just a semi decent offense? I think every down he's played has been in a subpar offense. Obviously it's Panthers and he's only been in the league for 2 years, but he's just dealing with quarterback change, coaching change, all this stuff. I think he deserves a mulligan. You give him that year. It didn't look good, his rookie year. He didn't catch hardly any balls at all. He comes in this year and suddenly, even without, the consistency that we're looking for still for a young receiver like that, he is actually kind of, making some noise now. I think I don't want to hype him up too much, but I think you're absolutely onto something when you say about his measurables and everything. All these signs that point to him succeeding in the NFL, he might just be a late bloomer. It's only his second year. He's got plenty of time to come on. A trade would have been ideal, maybe to a different spot for him to show off. The Panthers, they might be a couple years out from actually being competitive again, but I think, he has some value for you right now because even though the quarterback's changing in Carolina a lot, they're going to have to be throwing to the receivers, and he's going to be on the field enough. At least the way he's been on the field recently, these past 3 weeks, 86% snap share, 93 and 92% of snaps. It looks good. I think that he has a chance to actually contribute because he's getting a lot more targets than he has in his career.
And now they're letting him play on the outside, which is his natural position, right? He's a big guy who could run down the field, and his contested catchability is absolutely insane. He's been one of the best contested catch prospects that we could remember over a long time. I think he caught, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like 75% of contested catches or something ridiculous like that. Coming into the year, coming into the NFL. But just remember, he played with Joe Burrow at LSU, with Jamar Chase, with Justin Jefferson. He scored 13 touchdowns that season. And then his last year, he wasn't early declared. So his junior year, which was 2020, that was the COVID year, they only played 7 games, and he ended up, averaging more than 100 receiving yards per game that year. And he was the alpha on a run-heavy, defense-heavy offense, right? There was no Joe Burrow there. Joe Brady also left to come to the NFL. So this offense completely changed.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Joe Brady go to the Panthers?
I think, did he go straight to the Panthers? Yeah, I think he did.
I think he went to the Panthers, which is kind of funny.
It is funny. That's hilarious, actually. I just put 2 and 2 together. I'm thinking like, oh, he went to the Saints. No. He was at the Saints before he went to LSU. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Like the fact that they drafted Terrace Marshall. Good. Joe Brady's right there. Nope. That didn't work out.
That's just funny.
Very interesting. Well, it's funny because Joe Brady didn't work out either.
Right. That's the whole thing. The whole coaching staff didn't work out there in Carolina.
And they put him in the slot, which is weird. Like, why this big? It was a weird thing to do.
It's impossible to evaluate when you have that type of coaching problem. I mean, I'm not saying Cliff Kingsbury maybe. At least the only thing Cliff Kingsbury has going for him is continuity. There has been a continuity in Carolina, so that type of coaching situation you can't evaluate anybody. I don't think unless you're Baker Mayfield. then
let's
you
move
can
on to
on him.
Let's move on to Rachaad White here, number 4. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but we are beating a dead horse here every week. But if Leonard Fournette went down, Rachaad White would assume 90% snap share, most likely, and get all the work. This past week they split opportunities 16-11 in favor of Fournette. There might be random, sporadic moments with some standalone value for White, but you won't be able to predict it when it happens. This is kind of random. This is really about a high-end handcuff at this point, because of his situation and the ability in the receiving game. That's really about it. Anything else to add about Rachaad White, or have we beat a dead horse?
No, we've been beating the dead horse. Like I said, all we should do is we should go from Terrace Marshall to Rachaad White, just like this is your weekly reminder to pick up Rachaad White, and then just move on.
Pretty much. Alexander Madison, another weekly reminder for him. He has no standalone value whatsoever right now, but he's been dropped. You can tell, during these bye weeks, right? Because people need guys to start and all that. And he's now available in a lot of leagues. So he's an RB1 if Dalvin Cook were to ever go down. He's like a staple bench stash as we get into the final stretch of the fantasy season. Yeah. So, similar situation to Rachaad White. Odell Beckham at number 6 here. Like I mentioned that, he is going to get medically cleared according to Jay Glazer by the end of the week. Could be a bidding war. The reason why I have him up here is just to take a shot, right? Like if someone like Baltimore or Kansas City or Buffalo, or the Chargers end up signing him, maybe Green Bay, as much as Green Bay can make sense. Like they're 3-6, right? Like he's not going to sign with them. Like he wants another ring. So could be the Cowboys too. Apparently they have a lot of interest in him as well. I wouldn't like that so much for fantasy. I prefer Chargers. I'm sorry. I prefer Chargers. I prefer Kansas City, and I prefer Buffalo. Like those are like the main places that I would I think that he could do something.
I wouldn't want Buffalo. I think they have enough targets there. I mean, I know Gabe Davis hasn't been producing, but I still think there's, especially with Josh Allen too, we're not sure. That might actually sway him away. We'll see how Josh Allen's injury comes out.
We'll
if Josh Allen isn't going to be playing, I don't think Odell's going to be like, send me over there. I'll play with who's their backup? Chase Daniel?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
No, not Chase Daniel. No. What's his name? Case Keenum. Yeah.
I think OBJ would, if OBJ is right and he looks good, like he'll play over Gabe Davis.
Well, yeah. I think he could. He stepped in right behind Cooper Kupp. I guess that's true.
Remember you got to realize who this coaching staff is, right? They want the veterans, right? Like, they just grabbed Naheem Hines when they have James Cook. They had Gabe Davis and they played Emmanuel Sanders over him, right? So like Emmanuel Sanders was like 32 years old. So OBJ is 30, and like I could totally see them doing something like that,
Yeah. I don't know.
Just to have a more, complete receiver, I would say. You know what I mean? Like, because OBJ can run all the routes,
right?
But who knows? Like, he's coming off the ACL. Like, it's a weird situation. It's really hard to gauge like how much of an impact he's going to make for any team, for fantasy nonetheless.
Yeah.
But without too many wide receivers on the waiver wire, like if you're in need of a wide receiver, you want to take your shot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially if you think you have a good shot at making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. My dream destination, I think, for Odell, I think it's the Ravens, but that's just me. Just because the way they're so depleted, they need a receiver. Did you see Deshaun Jackson? He's out with a hamstring injury already.
Oh my God! Of course.
Any surprise, right? I mean, what is he? 35?
No surprise there.
I wish, obviously, I don't want him to get injured, but it's like you had to have seen this coming. Like, come on. It's kind of been his MO, since he's past age 30. He's always injured. He's a deep threat. He caught that one pass, and I thought maybe he'd have like a night where he'd end up on this list today. It's like maybe you could pick him up while they figure things out at receiver. I think if Odell would go to Baltimore, I think him and Lamar could build a nice connection because just seems like a spot that he could go to. And to go back to what you said about the Cowboys, I don't want him to go to the Cowboys. I don't think you want any receiver to go to the Cowboys any more than they already have, because if just Dak Prescott distributes the ball, and that's all he does. He never lasers in. He never hones in on one receiver and makes them fantasy relevant. Everyone has a ceiling of about like 18 points down there. And that's the way it's going to be.
That's true. All right. I got Chase Edmonds here, number 7. A little bit of a drop off here with these pickups. But Edmonds, he was traded to the Broncos. The reason why I like him as a pickup is because there's been so much churn in this backfield, and neither Latavius Murray or Melvin Gordon seem like they have any sort of stranglehold on their roles. And Edmonds, he's going to start as the passing down back, as soon as this week, and he can easily creep into some sort of early down role ahead of one of these guys. I think it could happen. Maybe not this week, but I think it could happen over the next couple of weeks potentially. So I think at some point there can be some fantasy value here. I don't think the ceiling is too high, right? I think this is more of a like, maybe you have a shot at a low end RB2. Maybe. But that's really about it. I don't think the ceiling is that high. I don't think he ever becomes like an every down back or anything like that. But he could have a role on all 3 downs, and I think that part is why he could have some value later on.
Yeah. None of these waiver wire pickups are really going to be home runs. There's been one home run on the waiver wire this year. It's Kenneth Walker. But Chase Edmonds, I don't think they have any talent there that's going to make me think that Chase Edmonds isn't going to get at least a fair shot, not just this week, but, in the next few weeks to show what he can do. Like I said, when he originally got traded, when we talked about that, we recapped it, was it last week? Chase Edmonds offers them something that they don't have, and that's like a good pass catching back. Melvin Gordon, I wouldn't call him a good pass catching back. Latavius Murray is just in there to get that touchdown, vulture that touchdown, and make sure nobody is fantasy relevant there. That's what he does. So I think Chase Edmonds gives them something they don't have, and especially if things start clicking and Russell Wilson looks good with him, catching passes out of the backfield, he could stick. Like I said, they're trying to cling to whatever they can to make this offense work, especially with them being 3-5. Like we saw Jerry Jeudy before the week before against the Jaguars. He was at the center of trade talks. He had a good game. I don't think they were going to look to move him after Russell Wilson dialed in and was looking for him a good amount of the time. So I think that they're going to just ride whatever hot hand they can. If Chase Edmonds can get that, he'll have enough opportunity, kind of get the chance to take that opportunity and run with it.
Javonte Williams had 21 targets in his 3 healthy games. So, there could be some value here.
Yeah.
Chase Edmonds could potentially catch some balls out of the backfield, just like you said. Chuba Hubbard, I have him here at number 8. He got a limited practice in on Monday. He was listed as a limited participant, and my guess is he's going to play this week. This is really for the rest of the season. It's possible he doesn't. This is a short week. Maybe they leave him out another week. It's very possible. So if that's the case, Deontay Foreman, solid play this week for sure. But I think this is really for the rest of the season, right? He's going to be their passing down guy. He's going to mix in on early downs as well. So if the Panthers are truly a losing team, which they are, if we're going to be honest with ourselves here, no one wanted to be honest before what they just saw this past week.
Right.
No one wanted to be honest. And then they saw it, they're like, oh yeah, I forgot. But he's going to get more run at times than Deontay Foreman. Like, he's going to have his games, right? Like, I can totally see a game. Chuba Hubbard has a better game than Deontay Foreman. That's going to happen. And I think he is going to be every week. He's going to have every week flex consideration with RB2 upside. Kind of like, if you want to compare him to someone like, I don't know, Tyler Algier. Not the role, because they have completely different roles, but it's more like you can plug him in if you need to.
Yeah.
Type of thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good comparison, actually, because, obviously the Falcons offense has looked better than we wanted to, but it's still, it's all right. They had that good game against the Panthers 2 weeks ago. So that they kind of have going for them. But I don't think we're going to see that again on Thursday night or in the future, especially with Chuba. When Chuba Hubbard comes back, I think that he's going the first game back where he's healthy. I think he's going to outperform Deontay Foreman. And that's just because, we saw Deontay Foreman. He had that big game. And then last week he really shit the bed. I don't think that his role is necessarily on lock like we thought it might have been before this dud that he put up last week. I think that Chuba Hubbard, he's been there enough. He's been there a while, and he was there in relief of Christian McCaffrey before. I think the Panthers will be happy to lean on him again.
I have Wan'Dale Robinson number 9 here. He had a disappointing game before their bye, but I think he's still worth picking up based on his 36% and 24% targets per route run the 2 weeks prior to his last game. And it's possible he gets back to that. Now, I have Darius Slayton, the other Giants wide receiver, down at number 15 on this list. And he's actually been above 20% target share in 3 of the last 4 games. Yeah. And he's targeted downfield a lot more as well. But I'm willing to give Wan'Dale another shot, just because he's young, because of his speed, his ability after the catch, a little bit more dynamic than Darius Slayton, a little bit more upside, I would say, right? Because he had one bad game, I don't want to hold it against him. A lot of people dropped him, after that bad game, especially since they had a bye this past week. So I'll pick him up just to kind of see, what I have in him over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And we've been talking about Wan'Dale on the waiver wire for a long time this season since he's come back from his injury. I think that he'll be a nice piece for your team. You don't really have much to lose by picking up Wan'Dale Robinson, and that's the way it kind of gets, this far down on the waiver wire. But there's a good chance you have receivers on your bench right now that haven't done much for you. There's a reason they're on their bench. Why not take a swing at this upside? Because if this Giants offense gets anything more going in the passing game, I think Wan'Dale Robinson's going to be on the, he's going to be first up in the line to get some more targets.
Jaylen Warren at number 10 here, another high-end handcuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
If Najee Harris continues to be ineffective, or if he gets hurt, Warren can assume an every down workload. They are coming out of a bye. You never know. Maybe he sees more work coming out. I'm not betting on it. Like, if I had to bet, like, is Jaylen Warren going to be the guy right now? Like, I would say, like, no. Like, that would be my bet.
Yeah.
But you never know, right? Like, Najee was a high draft pick, right? Like, I don't know if they, because when you do that, you're making a statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if they want to make that statement. Like, Najee, sorry, man. Jaylen Warren's going to be our 1A. I'm not sure. Now, it is that time of year to stock up on handcuffs, like those upside handcuffs. Yeah. So if Najee Harris were to get hurt, if that foot gets worse, whatever, right? Knocking on wood, hoping it doesn't, wishing the best for the guy. But this is kind of like covering your bases, have another upside running back who's widely available on waiver wires on your bench. That's pretty much it. We talk about him every week. Same thing.
Yeah, same thing as Rashad White and Alexander Madison. Jaylen Warren's been on this list a lot. But, you're right about the statement thing. I don't think they're going to do that. They can't do that because, yes, Najee Harris, we're seeing the same problems we saw last season. Just, he's not getting the volume anymore. But the offense is so bad that you can't just like say, all right, we're going to start Jaylen Warren over Najee Harris because this offense is bad. It's not going to change the way the offense looks at all, I think. It's just going to be Jaylen Warren getting more production, more consistent production than Najee Harris. So they're not going to make that change. I don't think it's going to happen where he becomes, like a clear 1A. but I could definitely see him producing more towards what we've seen from him recently than what we saw at the beginning of the year. Because at this point, you don't have to name Jaylen Warren the 1A. You can just run the hot hand approach. I think that
Yes,
would work.
I agree. I've seen crazier things happen. You never know.
Right. Yeah, you can't rule anything out, especially at this point in the season. They're going for, if they want to go for broke and try to save the season, maybe that's the type of move you got to make. But I don't think there's any saving the Steelers season right now. They're just
No.
they're just in limbo at quarterback, and it's not Kenny Pickett's fault or anything. It's just the way it is right now. We weren't expecting this offense to be good, and it's just kind of matching expectations. So at this point, I think we're just resigned to say you could take your shots on guys in this offense because they're going to be rotating them in and out.
Deshaun Watson, I have him here at number 11. I think it's about that time, right? If you're in need, this is the first time he's on the waiver wire list, right? I think it's about that time now. We're in a double-digit week at this point. So if you're in need of an upside quarterback and you've been streaming, you missed out on your opportunity to grab Justin Fields. That was your opportunity.
Yeah,
Justin Fields was your opportunity, man. We talked about it last week. If you missed out on him, I'm sorry. I think it's time. Cut your losses. Grab Deshaun Watson. Stash him. Only if you need that upside quarterback and you think he can make a difference for you if he does reach that upside. And, his first start can be on December 4th. So that's 4 games from now.
Yeah. Just a question, I'm thinking about it. Who would you want to have Deshaun Watson over? If you're starting a guy like Tom Brady, would you say you'd replace Tom Brady with Deshaun Watson at this point? Would
Hell
you want?
It's not even
All
close.
All right. How about Marcus Mariota?
Yes.
All right. How about
all those guys?
All of those guys. How about a Geno Smith?
If I have Geno, I am not prioritizing Deshaun.
All right. And here's one. Russell Wilson.
Oh, hell yeah. Russell Wilson's not even you can't even start Russell Wilson right now in a regular 10 or 12 team league.
I'm not going to ask about Derek Carr.
No, don't. Please don't.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, if I had Kirk Cousins, I would be stashing Deshaun Watson.
All right.
Yeah, because Kirk Cousins doesn't have the upside that Deshaun Watson has, right? So Deshaun Watson has the ability to be a top 5 quarterback, fantasy quarterback. Mm-hmm. So because of that, like, for example, I'll say this, can Deshaun Watson outscore Lamar Jackson over the last 4 weeks of the season? Yeah.
Yeah, this version of Lamar Jackson, he can, yes.
Right. So, if you can do that, then most likely I'm going to be stashing you if I need a quarterback. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's kind of how I'm rolling with it. So I'm looking at these other names here. If I have Justin Herbert, yes, I'm grabbing Deshaun Watson. If I have, let's see, Dak Prescott, yes, I'm grabbing him. Kirk Cousins, yes. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Those are all the mid-tier quarterbacks. Obviously, you don't consider Matthew Stafford because he's been bottom barrel. Yeah, Saints quarterbacks, you don't do anything. I think that's fair. The only thing for me is just if you happen to land Deshaun Watson on the waiver wire, it's not a slam dunk yet. Because when he played in the preseason, obviously he was out of football a while. He played that one game, I think, before his suspension set in. And he didn't look very good. I'm not sure. I think all this time away from football, it's going to show, definitely. I don't know the extent of it, but it's going to show. He's not going to be I wouldn't bet on him being a top 5 quarterback when he comes right back in, the first week or maybe even 2. I think we're going to see the rust. The rust is going to have to be knocked off. But, if you make it to the championship in your league, and you want to throw him in, you somehow survive with a guy like Justin Herbert at quarterback, maybe you could throw Deshaun Watson in and he'd have some upside for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how I'm treating it too. I would have to be in pretty desperate mode for me to start.
Yeah,
circumstances. There you go. Thank you. For me to start Deshaun Watson in his first game back.
Yeah,
as soon as he's there's gonna be so many. There's gonna be a huge spotlight on Deshaun Watson. It'd be crazy. And I'm not don't get me wrong here. I'm not rooting for this situation. It might sound like I am, but I'm not. Okay, because Deshaun Watson did what he did. Dude's a fucking weirdo. Okay, but I'll say this. Okay, the spotlight's gonna be on him. And if he puts in, if he has a 35-point fantasy game, it's gonna make a lot of fantasy managers in a weird spot, because they're gonna be rooting for this guy on touchdown. Woohoo! What I'm saying? It's such a weird place to be, because you have your real life over here, and all the women that you respect in your life. And then you have like fantasy football over here. And it's like, what am I supposed to do?
Okay, so this is the funniest thing. You talk about a spotlight. Also consider the fact that he's returning, not only playing against Houston, he's returning to Houston. Like, man.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Is that his first game back?
His first game back is in
God.
Houston. It's like, they wrote this up. They came up with that suspension length. I thought that was a weird suspension length when they announced it. His first game back is against Houston. So, like, the spotlight is 100% going to be on Deshaun Watson. Browns. And the thing is, Houston is a bad defense. So maybe he will just come out and just, like, be on fire immediately, you know?
Oh, my God.
If Jalen Hurts had an all right day, I think, you know, a touchdown, 2 touchdown passes, 2 total touchdowns is a floor for any quarterback against Houston's defense right now.
Week 13, Cleveland Browns at Houston Texans. Oh my God. Wow.
That one was definitely planned. Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God. I did not realize that. Maybe I heard that once and then I just forgot about it, but that's kind of crazy. His teammate, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I have him here at number 12. You want a wide receiver to just give you points? That's DPJ. 5 straight weeks of at least 9 PPR fantasy points. He's been double digits on every other week besides that one, but he has a high floor. He hasn't shown much of a ceiling yet, but maybe he does have one when Deshaun Watson comes back. Who knows? But for now, doesn't matter what the matchup is. Like, you can start him and he'll just like be solid for you.
Yeah. And he's not somebody you want to be starting at wide receiver 2, but if you have a wide receiver 3 slot or you have nobody at flex, he'll get it done for you very nicely.
Or if you have no one at your wide receiver 2 spot, like I can attest to that. Sometimes you got some troubles at your wide receiver spot, and you got to get someone who can just give you some points. And
there were a lot.
If I had DPJ on those teams, I'll be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, there were a lot of buys, like guys like CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, a bunch of good receivers were off last week, so this week they'll be back, but. He's been a nice fill-in. He started producing. It's funny, that 9-point floor. He started producing as bye week set in. So it's like he was the perfect.
But he's been on this waiver wire list every single week for the past
100%,
7-8 weeks.
It's just funny to think because like that's exactly what you want. Like if there's no slam dunks on the waiver wire to pick up, he's what you want to just fill in for that.
And there's a bunch of those type of guys on this list, and we'll get there. Gus Edwards, he has a hamstring injury. Obviously, didn't play last night, but he can come back the following week after their bye. They have a bye this week, right? J.K. Dobbins, you never know when he's going to be available. He's going to be out for a while, right? Yeah. And Edwards can potentially keep a starting job, once he's back. So, by the way, Kenyon Drake last night, I don't remember the last time I've seen a running back on the Ravens get 24 carries.
Right. No, I can't remember that either.
I don't think I've even seen a running back get more than like 16 carries.
Yeah.
On the Ravens over the past like 3 years.
They just kept feeding him. And he wasn't even that efficient, but they just kept giving it to him. It just worked out in his favor. Justice Hill was, a non-factor. Mike Davis had that one catch that Mike Davis had.
Yes.
Like, it's just, I don't know.
He's a big guy. Like, when I saw it, I was like, oh my God. Like,
Mike Davis. He's like a bowling ball. Yeah, there you go. Nice. All right. Yeah. No. You want to know true? I call Mike Davis a bowling ball. What is Patrick Ricard then? Did you see him?
Dude.
He is ridiculous. Could you imagine? Like they said, he's a fullback, but he's 6'3", 300 pounds. That's a tackle running out of the backfield, like every play. And he's not like this fat guy,
he's athletic, man.
He's humongous. That's what he is. So I wouldn't want to face him. I forget. Was Patrick Ricard? No, it wasn't Patrick Ricard. It was Morgan Moses. That was lead blocking for Lamar Jackson on the one. But I remember it's just thinking every time I see Patrick Ricard, I'm like, man, they should use him more. They used him as an up back on one carry, I think it was, and he got it. It's like, who's stopping him?
100%, man. So yeah, they're going to bye week. I feel like you can pick him up, and you might not be able to start him as soon. Like, he might be out again after the bye. You never know. But this is more of a long-term pickup. Okay, you're gonna have to hold him through the bye. A lot of people dropped him this week. Kyren Williams, I have him at number 14. I moved Kyren Williams down. Like, he was higher last week. He was like in the top 5 or 6 pickups. Yeah. I moved him down because the Rams backfield is just a mess right now. I think he definitely has and the backfield is like a 3-man backfield right now. Like, he has a chance of making his way up that depth chart, making this backfield a lot less noisy.
Yeah,
possible. But who knows if that happens, right? Darrell Henderson, he had about 50% of snaps, followed by Malcolm Brown, followed by Cam Akers with 19% of snaps. Next week, who knows what it is. I'd assume that Kyren can be the most valuable because they obviously don't like any of these guys. And maybe they like Kyren, and then he moves up to the 1A.
Yeah.
How much does a 1A get? I don't know. But you're going to have to eliminate a couple of these guys from this rotation if he's going to have any value. I think he's still worth stashing. Would you say that he's still worth stashing?
Yeah.
They have no solution in the backfield right now, so keep him until you see him on the field.
That's the thing. You look at the running backs that the Rams are fielding now. It's like, do you want any of them on your roster, really? I mean, Darrell Henderson, maybe you have him on your bench just in a pinch, but he hasn't been doing much.
He's a roster clogger right now.
He's a roster clog right now. That's what he's doing. So it's not like you have any hope for upside with these guys that are already, playing for the Rams. All you're doing with Kyren Williams is stashing him and hoping that he shows just a little bit more than everybody else. Because at this point, there's nobody that's going to do anything. There's nothing preventing Kyren Williams from, moving up and ascending on the depth chart. Unless Kyren Williams is that bad, I don't see a situation where, he doesn't move up a little bit. What you have with Kyren Williams is hope because he hasn't played. We've seen the rest of them play. There's no hope with them. They're not going to take over this backfield. They're not going to get enough carries to be relevant. So you're just holding on to Kyren Williams and hoping that he can step up, move above all of them, clear them on the depth chart, and have some sort of fantasy, value moving forward in this Rams backfield. Because as things stand right now, there's none.
Exactly. I have Darius Slayton here at number 15. He's one of those other guys that, just give me some points, please.
Yeah.
And he's been above 20% target share, like I mentioned earlier, in 3 of his last 4 games. He went above 11 PPR fantasy points in those 3 games. The game he didn't do it was against Baltimore. And we talked about, Baltimore's defense stepping up. But he has Houston this week, followed by Detroit. So a couple of weeks over the next 2, starting this week, that you can stream him if needed, if you're desperate. I picked him up last night in one league just because of the fact that I'm depleted at wide receiver and I need somebody to just please give me points. So that's why I picked him up. And I plan on starting him this week in that league. But yeah, he's one of those guys that, he could get you some points. Between him and Wan'Dale Robinson, it could go back and forth, right? As of right now, we don't know who the number 1 wide receiver is. Darius Slayton has actually been a little bit more reliable than Wan'Dale lately. However, I would say Wan'Dale has more upside moving forward.
I would submit that Saquon Barkley is wide receiver 1 on this offense right now. So yes, don't forget that.
I guess so, but Saquon hasn't been getting the targets that, one of the reasons why I love Saquon this year is because, and it worked out. But Saquon hasn't get the targets like I thought he would, honestly. And look at the last few games. 5, 4, 3, 6, 2, 4, 4. I just did the whole season. But
the last few games, the whole season, yeah.
It's like all of them. And it's not crazy, right? Like I personally thought that he would be getting like 7 to 8 targets a game just because they have nobody, right? But he's only getting 4.4 targets a game this year, which is not. Saquon is an amazing receiver. He should be their wide receiver 1. He should be running. He's running a lot of routes, but he should be getting more targets just because we know what he could do with the ball in his hands. So hoping, could them coming out the bye that, they could do something and kind of evolve him more. But how many more touches do they want him to get? Because if they do end up giving him 5 more, 6, 7 targets a game, that means he'll be hitting that 30 touch threshold, on a weekly basis. Do they want to do that? I don't know.
You run up the mileage quick on a running back doing that. But
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I prefer to if you want to lessen the load a little bit on these running backs, maybe you give them less carries.
Yeah.
And then, maybe put it down to 15 carries, but then give them 7, 8 targets, right? I feel like that'll be more efficient too.
It's hard to say, give them more targets because 9 times out of 10 on play designs, the running back is just a check down. They're not the first, second, or third read. They're just a check down if there's nothing there. So that isn't always the case. But I think that, if we're talking about, maintaining Saquon Barkley, I think what he's doing right now is going to be fine. We just, obviously, as fantasy people, we'd love to see more targets, but we'll see if that comes. The other thing that the receivers in New York have working against them is that Daniel Jones is running it like crazy. He just looks it. I was sitting here while you're talking, thinking about how are the Giants actually moving the ball downfield and scoring? I'm looking at these projections and these stat lines for these receivers. I'm like, how are they doing it? I remember that Daniel Jones. Oh yeah, he's running for 6 or 7 first downs a game. So that could be it. that's one thing they have working against them. The passing volume hasn't been there in New York, and it's been a winning formula, so it's not going to change. You really only have hope for one, clear receiver in this Giants passing attack to kind of emerge and be fantasy relevant. It's going to be Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Kenny Galladay's out of the discussion. He's not going to be that guy. Darius Slayton could, be the wide receiver one a couple weeks down the stretch. I think Wan'Dale Robinson's a guy. That's just me. But
yeah,
we've been saying that this
exactly.
whole time. Right.
And that's why he's much higher in this list. He has more upside. But Slayton is a guy that you can start, get you some points. And if Wan'Dale was available on that waiver wire, instead of picking up Slayton, I would have picked up Wan'Dale.
Yeah.
I got Mecole Hardman at number 16. He's now had 4 straight weeks of doing his thing. But it's hard for me to really recommend him because
hard, man.
Number one, it's an anomaly.
Yeah.
He had 9 targets this past week. But that's really only a count Mahomes threw it 100 times. And he's running a route on only 50% of dropbacks. So his production is not sustainable. So he's a sell if I have him. Okay. However, I also have him on this list because if you need upside, right, he's one of those boom bust options that you can throw in your lineup, right? Like he just happened to be booming lately. Like it's ingenuous of me to look at the fantasy points that he's scored over the last few weeks and say that no, you cannot start him. No, you can. Just realize that he's boom bust and it's possible that he gives you a couple points. You also have to imagine that Kadarius Toney, he gets implemented a little bit more in this offense next week. It could be at the expense of Mecole Hardman. Because that Juju's going to be on the field. That MVS is going to be on the field. That Travis Kelce is going to be on the field. So it's going to be at the expense of Hardman that Kadarius Toney starts getting on the field more.
Yeah. But as long as, Kadarius Toney's, not getting on the field, not getting those looks, Mecole Hardman could be a guy that could, fill in for you pretty nicely. I remember I've seen him. He's been sitting on the waiver wire in a few of my leagues, and I'm thinking, why isn't he producing? With Patrick Mahomes at quarterback and all this turnover at receiver, Juju isn't really doing his thing. But it's finally starting to happen. It's okay. I wanted to pick him up, but if he's there, you take him and add him as a trade piece. That's what I do. I'm not trusting him to start every week, but I think that the way he's been, playing recently, though, the way they've been using him has been great. He had 3 touchdowns against the Niners, which they're a good defense. I don't think that's going to happen every week, like you said. And with Patrick Mahomes throwing it 68 times, yes, that's going to add up, and he's going to have a decent performance. But they have a pretty tough schedule coming up after this week in Jacksonville. Chargers, Rams, Cincinnati, Denver, Houston, as far as fantasy points go. So I think that, better days are not really ahead. He's going to kind of regress to the mean. Like we talk about sustainability going one way with guys like Joe Mixon, AJ Brown, and Justin Jefferson. It's going to go the other way for Mecole Hardman.
I agree. I got Zay Jones here as another guy who just give me some points during these buys. He runs the most routes for Jacksonville. The Jaguars get the Chiefs this week. Like you just mentioned, it's a great matchup to stream him if you need to. The reason why I'm playing him over Marvin Jones is because he runs more routes. And he's going to be on the field more. And the Chiefs are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. If you have to think the Jaguars are going to go down this game, right? And they're going to have a negative game script. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I really like Trevor Lawrence this week. So in turn, I'm going to like Zay Jones as well.
Yeah. And Zay Jones has kind of been, when Christian Kirk isn't doing his thing, it's been the Zay Jones show, even though the Zay Jones show hasn't had a whole lot of production.
The Zay Jones show sucks. This show is terrible. It's a terrible show. You can't spend time watching this show. There's so many better shows on TV than the Zay Jones show. It's been bad. He has been a little disappointing, honestly. I think he's a better receiver than his production. But at the end of the day, you are only as good as your production. That's an Elijah Moore statement.
Okay. That's 100% true. He has 1 touchdown on the year. He's not benefiting from touchdown upside, and that's just because he's just on the Jaguars offense. And with Travis Etienne, doing his thing, he's probably going to be 9 times out of 10. He's going to be the one scoring touchdowns. If it's through the air or on the ground. I thought that the Jaguars went, quantity over quality this offseason with their additions. Christian Kirk looks okay. Zay Jones, I think, like you said, he's better than he's been producing, but this has kind of been the story of his career.
It's true.
He's just been kind of there.
It's true. I'm not a Zay Jones truther anymore. Listen, man, if you're really that good, you should be putting up better numbers. That's it.
And granted,
that's what it comes down to.
He hasn't had excellent quarterback play. If I'm not mistaken, he was in Las Vegas.
I'll say this. I'll say
So,
this though. If Trevor Lawrence had an elite wide receiver, that wide receiver will put up big numbers.
yeah. So if Devontae Adams went to the Jaguars, you'd
He would
rather have
be- he would be doing
Devontae
better.
Adams with
He would be,
Trevor Lawrence.
I'd rather
than
have
with Derek
Trevor
Carr.
Lawrence than Derek Carr as
All
my
right.
quarterback
All right, yeah, that makes sense.
for peppering my number one wide receiver.
Yeah, I think that's true. That makes sense.
He was peppering Christian Kirk. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And it's like,
Well,
if he did that to his actual number one wide receiver, like a legit alpha wide receiver, I think the alpha wide receiver would go nuts.
yeah. I mean, he was peppering Christian Kirk. You know, it's kind of come and gone, the targets. He's had a couple games where he's had double-digit
Exactly.
targets.
That's the point. It's come and gone because he's not an alpha. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's tried to give him that 30% target share over the first
Yeah, I guess
4 or
true.
5 games of the season. But it's come and gone because of the fact that Christian Kirk is not an alpha, but
Yeah.
he's impersonating one right now, and he's doing a pretty good job doing it.
Yeah, I think he's still a good receiver, but what they signed
100%.
him for and what they signed him to play as, it didn't really add up to me when I saw the signing. Obviously everyone was griping about the amount of money in the contract, but I was thinking, if that's their big money signing, he's not, like you said, an alpha. He's not a wide receiver one.
All they need is that alpha. If they get a true wide receiver one on the outside with Zay Jones on the other side as a wide receiver, the opposing wide receiver two, and then Christian Kirk in the slot, this is going to be, and Travis Etienne in the backfield. I feel like that's that one piece that they're missing, in terms of playmakers. Like that is going to I think that could put Trevor Lawrence over the top.
Yeah. I mean, and we've seen flashes from Trevor Lawrence of him actually, kind of having that talent. He's doing what he needs to do. He's been in a bad situation, so far in his career, but things are slowly getting better. They do need to go get an actual receiver. The thing is, they used all their money, like I said, going quantity over quality. They added they had Zay Jones. Evan Ingram's been all right. I guess that signing isn't that bad.
It was a solid signing.
Yeah, it was all right, but they didn't add anybody notable. Like I said, I forget who I compared him to. But the Dolphins. I said, obviously they went out and got Tyreek Hill, but I said they were giving two of these weapons, young quarterback weapons, and look what they are doing in Miami. Just up the highway, right? They're down the highway. I'm not sure geographically, Jacksonville, Miami. But the same state, Tua's doing his thing because he got all these weapons, and I think, the Dolphins went quality. They got Tyreek Hill. The Jaguars went quantity, and we're seeing how that plays out.
Look at all these wide receiver. Look at all these quarterbacks who don't have a top end wide receiver.
Aaron
Lamar
Rodgers.
Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert. You know what I'm saying? Like, they need their guys.
Yeah.
No. Oh, that's the point.
Yeah.
They need their guys on the field.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if they don't have their guys on the field, they're just simply not going to do as good.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, without Keenan Allen this entire year,
Hasn't looked like Justin Herbert.
Even though he had Mike Williams, who, by the way, I don't think he's a true alpha. He's a very good wide receiver.
Yeah.
But he's not like that upper echelon guy. And because of that, he's not going to do as well. He's not an all-around wide receiver.
So Mike Williams, I kind of compare, to T. Higgins. I know T. Higgins is still young and he's good, but I'm not sure T. Higgins is alpha, if that makes sense. He's not Jamar Chase, obviously. Jamar Chase
is not
alpha.
Jamar Chase.
But I think, we've seen T. Higgins do his thing when Jamar Chase is out. We've seen Mike Williams do his thing when Keenan Allen's out. Both of them are very good possession receivers. They're big play machines. But outside of that, they're not like the guy that you're throwing short, intermediate, and deep to,
I think you have a good argument there.
Yeah.
I think you do.
And they both went to Clemson, right?
Yeah, they did.
Just a little parallel right there. It's weird storylines, how that comes together, right?
So, I think we can see Trevor Lawrence this week potentially have a good week against Kansas City.
Yeah. Bottom line, Zay Jones is a wire pickup.
Michael Gallup, I have him here at number 18. It's getting really desperate at this point. He had a 24% target share last week. They didn't have to throw a ton, but that's a good sign. Like, the target share, good sign for him. If they do need to throw a ton at some point, he doesn't seem to have too much upside at this point. But I still consider him a streamer. Isaiah McKenzie at number 19. His snaps are moving up just a little bit, by the way. Like 70% route participation last week. If Josh Allen plays next week, with that elbow injury, he might favor those short throws, right, to Isaiah McKenzie, who hasn't been getting targets over the last couple of weeks. So, with his snaps kind of moving up more than we thought, it's not really a 50-50 anymore. with him and Khalil Shakir, maybe it flips back the other way. But for now, like if Josh Allen isn't going to be throwing those deep balls, and if he's advised not to, I know he threw that big bomb at the end of the game, even with the injury. But it's a UCL injury. He might not want to, create more damage to that elbow. And if that's the case, maybe Isaiah McKenzie and these running backs, they might be the ones benefiting.
Yeah, I think that could be the case. And it's funny, you talk about UCL. It's a new CL injury. I've never heard of a UCL before. We've heard ACL, MCL. Now we're at UCL. But man, this is like there's all these injuries. I think that, it sounds like kind of like obvious. Obviously, if you're hurt, you're not going to throw it as deep. But I think that could be the case. It might be that simple. He might not be going as deep, in these next few games as he gets healthy.
Man,
hopefully he plays.
I have to create a story. I got to create a story around Isaiah McKenzie. I got to create a story, and that's the story I'm sticking with.
Yeah. Well, I think what you should do, it seems like we're talking about all these injuries now. I think we do need to have like a highlight on the Instagram page of Dr. Siddiqui. You know what I'm saying?
Just me, just talking nonsense, medically. Yeah.
Just our attempts at being medical experts and what it means for fantasy football. I might need a highlight of that. We'll see. But no, I think with the way Gabe Davis is playing too, obviously, he wasn't even targeted that much, I think, last week. So the way he's been, not producing, I think Isaiah McKenzie could be in line for a little bit more work.
Yeah, it's possible. I have Latavius Murray here at number 20, just because I couldn't find anybody else to throw here. This is just if you're desperate at running back, for a running back play, you need someone to throw in. He could give you 12 carries, 41 yards, and a touchdown. Like that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
For Latavius Murray.
Welcome to the Latavius Murray. This is what he does. And we said about that. He just comes in and makes sure nobody's fantasy relevant. Oh,
pretty much.
Melvin Gordon was supposed to get that touchdown. No, it's mine. You know what I'm saying? That's what he's done. He did that on the Saints. He's done that everywhere he's gone.
It's funny. Like I picked up Melvin Gordon last night in the league, and I was just like, this is how bad the Broncos backfield is. Like no one even wants Melvin Gordon. I picked him up and I felt dirty. And that's pretty much all we had. I did have some quarterback streamers and some tight end streamers real quick. If you guys are looking for that. So Marcus Mariota in Carolina on Thursday night, solid play. Daniel Jones against Houston at home. Dare I say it? Oh, by the way, if Trevor Lawrence is available, I'm playing Trevor Lawrence over all these guys against Kansas City. Okay. Then Marcus Mariota. Then Daniel Jones, then, dare I say it, Russell Wilson in Tennessee. Maybe. Don't do it, actually. Never mind.
I'm just thinking about the way Tennessee's defense they held Patrick Mahomes scoreless. I think they said 7 drives in a row.
Yeah. Never mind.
Maybe avoid Russell Wilson.
Never mind.
I don't know.
Hey, Mike, can you cut that part out, dude? Thanks, bro. Jimmy G at home against the Chargers. I think that could be a relatively decent. He has the weapons, so it could happen. He has Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk. Hopefully, Debo's back. Andy Dalton at Pittsburgh. If you're really desperate, I think this is a decent matchup for him. I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of Andy Dalton last night. I would think that he's going to be back to where he was the previous 2 weeks, which is basically like, give me 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
At tight end, I have Greg Dulcich. We already mentioned him as one of the top waiver wire pickups this week. He's going up against Tennessee. He's the priority ad. He could start for you the rest of the year. Cole Kmet against Detroit. Kmet caught 2 touchdowns, right, this past week?
Yeah.
And
3 touchdowns in 2 weeks. After not scoring since 2020.
Exactly. It's
the
so
Justin
true.
Fields effect.
Regression. Guys, I just want to say one thing, okay? When I say regression, it doesn't mean positive or negative. It just means regression, okay?
Yeah.
Just want to say that, okay? And positive regression does not mean progression. Those are 2 different things, okay? I just want to say that. I have so many comments on Instagram. Like, why do you keep saying regression? Why do you keep saying positive
returning
regression?
to the mean? Yeah.
It's called returning to the mean. That's what it means, regression. It doesn't mean returning to a worse state. It just means returning to a previous state.
Or what is expected, we should say.
Just wanted to put that out there. It's been getting on my nerves a little bit. Noah Fant. So Cole Kmet at versus Detroit at home. The Bears offense getting a little bit better. Cole Kmet could be an option for you. Obviously, he scored the touchdowns. That could be good enough for you. Noah Fant at Tampa Bay. He did his thing last week in a good matchup, and he led that team, surprisingly, in receiving, and he could maybe do it again against Tampa Bay. I doubt it. I think his other receivers are better, but Noah Fant could be an option. Cade Otton, he's showing up randomly. Okay, for Tom Brady. He did show up this past week, going up against Seattle. Good matchup there. So if you're desperate, you throw him in there, see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all I had.
No guys. Baker Mayfield? No Baker Mayfield?
Zach? If you're willing to start Russ, maybe you start Baker.
Yeah. Would you start Russell Wilson or Baker Mayfield? Just for anybody who
Russ,
might
man.
Okay.
Well, no. It's PJ Walker. It's PJ Walker this week.
That's right.
PJ Walker was named the starter, which is why I'm actually okay starting. I'm very okay starting DJ Moore, and I'm solid on Terrace Marshall as well.
Yeah,
this week. That's it. That's all we got, guys. Right at the 1 hour mark. Appreciate everyone listening. Always, tuning in every single day, Monday through Friday. We're recording this, so the more you listen, the more I appreciate you guys, man. For real. Zach and I both appreciate you guys. We'll be back tomorrow on Wednesday for our buy-sell show. Last week, our buy-sell show wasn't what it usually is because of all the trades that were coming in, the trade deadline and all that. We were covering that for the most part. But tomorrow, we'll have a bunch of buys for you, a bunch of sells for you, and we'll get it popping done. All right? Take it easy, guys. Good luck on waivers tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.